All right. Hey, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Happy Kidney Month, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Let's Talk Living Kidney Donation discussion today. I'm Allison Gillum. I'm the West Michigan Community Relations Coordinator here at Gift of Life Michigan. And we are really excited to bring this program to you today. We have an awesome panel here who we will introduce you to in just a minute. And we're going to be discussing all things living kidney donation. That includes how the process works, who can be a living donor, and what the benefits for donors and recipients are. So if you are a living kidney donor or a kidney recipient, be sure to comment and let us know. We would also love to know where you guys are watching from today. So leave a comment, like this video, share it with your family and friends. Use the hashtag Let's Talk, so we can be sure to see what you guys are commenting and track all of that. Before we get into our panel discussion, though, I want to bring in my most awesome co-host for our program today. If you're from West Michigan, you may know him from his wildly popular podcast or recognize him as the voice of the Grand Rapids Griffins. And I am genuinely thrilled to be joined by Mr. Eric Zane today. Eric, thank you for being here.
Well, the pleasure is mine, Allison. I'm just so happy to be part of it. I was tickled when you reached out. When I was going through my adventure, which I'll tell you about in a second, I had hoped something like this would happen, but wasn't really sure where to begin. So I am just excited to be doing this because it all kind of has fallen into place, and I have you to thank. So thank you so much for inviting me in.
Oh, no, thank you. I mean, as you kind of alluded to, as it turns out, you are uniquely qualified to speak on the subject of living kidney donation. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you and I got connected, how you became involved with this cause?
Sure. And it is quite one of my favorite things to talk about. And I'm actually writing a book about it. But in a nutshell, what has happened was I was struck to reach out and help someone, and it happened kind of in one of those weird Facebook ways. And sometimes I'm sure a lot of people who have donated, been a living donor, can say that this is how it happened. It just happens to hit you in the right way at the right time. For me, it was quite a religious experience on my end, and I try to say this, that I heard a voice telling me do my will, and I followed that out. Normally I don't, but for this time I did. And just at a strange moment in time, I was in my house and a name popped into my head. I looked it up, and it was a kid I went to high school with. Oh, how's he doing? And turns out he's prominent in his industry. He does video advertising and is a short filmmaker. And then I saw that he was quite successful, and reached out to him, and he reached back, and in a conversation via Facebook Messenger, he revealed that he has stage 5 kidney disease. And I had no idea, how I just knew stages, from cancer. I go, well, this sounds terrible. Well, that was about the extent of my knowledge about kidney disease and kidney donation. But he revealed to me that he had been having a heartbreaking 2 years where up to 10 people, I think, had tried to give a kidney away to him, and it did not work out for one way or another. And it was at that point that I convinced myself that it was going to work. I was going to do it. And so that was that. I made up my mind right there that I was going to give him my kidney. I had to run it by my wife first, which I did. And she the way I did it was, I was like, hey, so I gave her a hypothetical, and I was like, would you do this if you had that? Just like making a conversation with her. And she goes, oh yeah, I would do that. And I go, well, good. Guess what? So we actually both volunteered with the UCLA kidney transplant team in Westwood, California, in Los Angeles. And we both actually matched, but I had more antigen markers, 6 of the 12 needed. And so I was a really good match. So that was it. That happened in May of 2020. On December 2 of 2020, I donated a kidney to him. And so
that's not long ago.
No, I tell as many people as I can about the process, and because I've had people I know who listen to my podcast who've said, I think I'm going to do this. And this is a gradual thing. This isn't quite the same as filling out for the donor registry, which is equally amazing, which I encourage people to do at Gift of Life Michigan. But I mean, my job as a storyteller is to try to make kidney donation less of a daunting thing, because I did it. And so I try to not put it on a level of, oh, it's so incredible, because to me, it's just like, it's a great result because this gentleman's life was saved and he is doing so awesome. His name is Jeffrey. And I mean, his creatinine level in his kidneys, which is a marker of kidney failure, when that byproduct is high in your blood. Yours and mine should be at 1. Jeffrey's was 22 in June. Okay, he was dying.
Yeah, for sure.
One week after surgery, he was 0.98. My kidney was like an angry maid, and
wow,
my God. It really. So it worked, and it was an immediate, profound impact on his life, saved his life. He has 2 lovely kids and a beautiful wife, and I couldn't be happier, and I'm blessed to hear his voice on a regular basis. And I am just here to try to put a, hey, you can do this type of face on this. It's not so incredibly difficult, because when I see the faces of the people who are on dialysis on a regular interval, I'm like, this is horrible. It is. Right. Oh my gosh. So that's why I'm here. And I didn't have any idea of how I could get that word out on a more, I mean, it's one thing on my platform, if I'm here talking to the world saying dirty jokes and, oh, by the way, give a kidney. Right. If I'm associated with Gift of Life Michigan and with these great medical organizations, I can tell you, I mean, from experience, in my own special way, that a person can do this. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm glad to be here.
Oh, well, we are so glad you're here. It's truly like, the story is pretty remarkable, actually. Divine inspiration, serendipity, whatever you want to call it. It's really quite something. And so glad to hear that Jeffrey is doing well. How about you? How are you doing?
Never better. I just had my yearly physical. My creatinine level is just a little bit over 1, which was expected, but it could very well go down because the kidney compensates when you're reduced to half your kidney capacity. In a year or so, I will get about 25% back, but he said you're fine. And I was running and lifting weights by mid-January, and I am 100%. I forget that it happened, frankly. And
that's crazy.
Outside of a couple of marks on my belly, it's all good. It's all good. I have no complaints.
That's awesome. Again, thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to talking more about your experience kind of as we go on today. Why don't we bring in the rest of our expert panel today? If we can go ahead and bring everybody up on screen, and we will start introducing our panel to you. So we'll wait for everybody to kind of jump in and join us. But good morning. Welcome, all of you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yes. Thank you for joining us today. So happy you all could be here. Is that everybody? I think so. I think we've got everybody. So what I want to do, we have a lot to discuss for sure. And you guys are all, I think, the perfect people to discuss this with, all experts in your field and have life experiences that can draw on this. Before we get into all this, though, I would love it if each of you would kind of just briefly introduce yourselves and share your connection with living kidney donation. So why don't we start with Dr. Steinke from Spectrum Health Helen DeVos Children's Hospital. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I am so honored. I mean, as Eric said, I was really tickled when you reached out and asked me if I could do this. And I mean, what I do is I do what I love. I go to work every day and I'm living life doing what I love. I am a pediatric nephrologist. I've been at Helen DeVos Children's Hospital since 2008. And I'm the medical director of our pediatric kidney transplant program and very proud of that. It's one of the highlights of my life being involved with, it is such a life-changing thing for people to receive the gift of life through kidney transplant, whether it's living donor or deceased donor. This is truly a transformational experience for patients who have chronic kidney disease, end-stage renal disease, whether or not they're on dialysis prior to transplant.
Right. Yes. Thank you for all the amazing work that you do. And we are definitely looking forward to hearing your insights today. All right. How about Sarah? We have Sarah DeRoy, who's a registered nurse from Mercy Health St. Mary's Kidney Transplant Center there. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yours.
Yeah, so I work for Mercy Health. I am one of the living donor coordinators. So I work with a lot of our donors who are interested in becoming a living donor and walking them through that whole process, and then following them after they donate for a few years. I actually worked on the kidney transplant floor inpatient for about 3.5 years. So I got to see the other end of it too when the recipients would receive those transplants. And it was just really incredible to be able to see that.
That's awesome. Thank you also for the great work that you do. We definitely have some questions for you today to help us all understand this process. So looking forward to that. How about Elizabeth? Elizabeth, why don't you share your connection to kidney donation with us?
Okay. Again, I was surprised to get the information to want to share my story because I just thought that I was like, oh, I'm just donated a kidney and that was that. But I am a living kidney donor. I actually just donated a kidney to my mother last month. So on February 8th, we were able to go through the process and we are both doing well.
Happy to hear that. Yeah, we'll have some more follow-up questions for you too. I'm excited to hear about your experience. If you and Eric can share stories today.
Kidney donors have smiles. Her and I have we've got the twinkle in our eye. We know. So congratulations to you, Elizabeth. I'm so happy that you did that.
Salt of the earth, you guys. I'm telling you. And next we have the lovely Val Cobbs from the National Kidney Foundation of Michigan. Val, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at the Kidney Foundation.
Well, good morning. As Allison said, I am Val Cobbs, and I am the Senior Regional Manager for West Michigan's National Kidney Foundation. So within our organization, our primary focus is on prevention. So the prevention of kidney disease by really managing the two main diseases that cause it, which are diabetes and kidney disease. And we also do fundraising out of our office that then supports our program. So that's what I do. And again, just like Dr. Stanky, I love it. I wake up every day energized to be of service in the realm of kidney disease.
Awesome. Thank you as well. We're so grateful for all the services that the National Kidney Foundation of Michigan provides and everything you're doing to help people with chronic kidney disease. I'm very much looking forward to talking about that more today too.
Thank you.
And yes. And last but certainly not least, we have Acacia Walter-Rooks. Acacia, we are lucky to have you here with us today too. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your connection to kidney donation?
Hi, my name is Acacia, and I am a freshman in college. And my connection to the living kidney donation is I was a kidney transplant recipient of a living donor.
Awesome. Thank you. Again, we're looking forward to hearing more about what that experience was like for you. So thank you for being willing to be here today and share it with us. All right, you guys. So we've prepared some questions for you, but we also want to encourage everybody who's watching us live right now to type any questions you may have for our panel in the comments section. And we will do our very best to get to questions you have. And I will try to make sure I'm monitoring that as we go along. So I apologize if I miss anything right away, but please, we want everybody to kind of chime in today, whether you're watching live or the playback. Again, reminder, make sure you like this video, share it, leave a comment, and if you could use the hashtag Let's Talk, that would be awesome. So let's get into this thing. Val, I want to start with you.
Okay.
I read a stat on your website that said more than a million adults in Michigan have chronic kidney disease, and most of them don't even know it. So that's like what, 1 out of 7 Michiganders, right?
That is right.
Okay, so help us put this into perspective. What is the Kidney Foundation of Michigan doing to help people with chronic kidney disease in Michigan? I know you talked about that a little bit, but like, what can we do to help? How can people watching this support your efforts?
I'm so glad that you talked about this stat, because I tell you, there are some other chronic diseases that get tons of attention. And I feel like kidney does not, as it relates to the amount of people that actually live with this disease, knowing or not. And it's a scary stat if you really think that people are walking through life looking good, thinking that they're feeling good, and really their kidney disease is advancing daily and they don't know. So the reason why the Kidney Foundation works in the realm of prevention is to say, hey, listen, you are at this stage and here are things that you can do. So we offer some programs that work with persons who have CKD, so chronic kidney disease. One of the programs that we offer is the Kidney Path. It's a fantastic program where we work with people to manage the issues that they have surrounding this chronic disease. So they are specific to persons who have kidney disease. And it really is about, how do I live triumphantly with kidney disease? I think when you get that diagnosis, you feel like it's the end of the world. You feel like there's nothing I can do and my life is ending, but that is not true. You can still live in abundance, but you have to learn how to be your whole self outside of any diagnosis that is put on you. So how can I be part of my professional team, right? As I'm the patient, right? I'm number one. And so what can I do then to embrace this and live abundantly? And so that's what we do with PATH. It is a workshop where we learn to manage our disease in the best way that we can. Another huge program that we're working right now is our kidney profile. And a lot of you may have heard of GFR. So GFR stands for glomerular filtration rate, and it will test it's a blood test that tests for the function of your kidney. The Kidney Foundation is now working with healthcare professionals to really be test albuminals, and that is a urine test that will test for the damage of the kidneys. This is super, super exciting because they'll be able to detect kidney disease way earlier and then get you into treatment so that you're not waking up in an ER somewhere with a shunt in your arm dialyzing and you never knew that your kidneys had a problem. And it sounds like this couldn't happen, but it happens every single day. And so this will really help us bring focus on our kidneys and then know what we can do then to treat it. There's also a toll-free line that can be used. It's called NKF Peers and NKF Cares. And those are two lines where you can talk to peers and professionals on what it is to have CKD. What do I do as a patient? What can I do if I'm interested in donating a kidney? And all of that can be encompassed through the NKFM website or NKF website.
I was going to just say, I think it should be scrolling along the bottom here. And I would encourage everybody to go check out your website. There's so many great resources there, nkfm.org. Thank you. I want to get to a question that we actually had in the comments. And it's, how many of you had complications after the transplant? And was it a long road to heal from the complications? Now, maybe we could approach that from both sides. If you had complications after a living donation, and I'm sure, you know, what was it like to receive the kidney transplant too? Eric, do you want to go first?
Sure. Not a thing. I mean, outside of uncomfortableness for, I don't know, 6, 10, 12 hours after 28 hours, I was out of the hospital and, you know, beginning the recovery. I had no issues whatsoever. Not a thing. I wish I had more to say, but I had no complications.
Well, that's excellent. How about you, Elizabeth?
I could say the same with just like what Eric said. I was in the hospital for about 2 days. And other than that, besides having that trapped gas feeling, that was about it. That's
excellent news. Glad to hear that. Acacia, do you know, how are things for you and your living donor? How is your living donor doing? Do you know if that individual had any complications or anything like that?
I don't think she had any complications, no. And then I didn't either after the transplant. I was in the hospital obviously longer than her, just recovering, but there were no complications.
Awesome. Look at this.
Can,
all of you.
Can I follow up? Acacia, can I follow up now? As you have progressed, how with the follow-up appointments, are you continuing to get high marks from your physician about how you're doing in your recovery over the long term?
Yeah, I am. I did though go into I went into remission, or sorry, I went into rejection about like a year and a half ago in November. But other than that, everything has been really great, and I'm on a new medicine for rejection instead of a pill. I'm on a IV. So it's all been going really well, and my labs have been coming back good. So yeah.
Awesome. That's great. We've got some more questions. Yeah. So I don't I'll throw this out there, and whoever wants to respond to it, maybe Sarah or Dr. Steinke or whoever, can you talk about the effect that COVID has on chronic kidney disease, kidney transplant recipients and donors?
I could, I'll speak to that, and maybe Sarah wants to jump in from the adult standpoint. So I can talk to you as far as like what it's been like for our pediatric patients, but also the living donors. So when the pandemic first started last March, we did shut down our living transplant donation for the safety of our patients. And really, to put it in perspective, I mean, Elizabeth, Eric, they did something that was completely selfless. They went through a surgery that wasn't needed for them. It's completely elective, right? It is like the epitome of like a completely altruistic thing to do for somebody else. But with COVID, when you have to consider, we were very concerned about putting them at increased risk for being in the hospital, right? Because sick people come to the hospital. We had COVID patients in the hospital. So when all of this went down, and I'm an active member of UNOS and the Gift of Life Organ Committee. And so it really was pretty universal across the nation that living transplant was put on pause. We proceeded with deceased donation kidney transplants cautiously, though, because again, there was consideration of getting appropriate testing done on all deceased donors to ensure that they were negative for COVID and we would not risk any transmission of disease to the recipient. And then we also had to consider are our recipients, what is the risk benefit for our recipients to put them at risk for COVID, bringing them into the hospital with a transplant, going under a lot of immunosuppression, and potentially even further enhancing their risk for developing COVID, right? So we gave it a lot of thought, and we did really have to look at each and every one of our recipients to determine, we have some children that unfortunately have a lot of antibodies that make it very difficult for them to receive a transplant. And if we make them inactive, meaning they are not able to receive a kidney, we're not allowing them to receive offers from either living donors or deceased donors, then we could actually be putting them at a disadvantage. So we had to really look at each and every one of our patients for that. I will say the current state now, as time has progressed, that shutdown on our living transplant program really didn't last terribly long. We opened it up and then we started doing living donation mid last year. It only lasted a couple of months that we had shut it down, and we did successful living transplants last year. And And, you know, the hospital system got more savvy in terms of separating COVID positive patients into COVID units from COVID negative patients, and everyone in the hospital coming into the hospital getting tested to make sure that we aren't just making assumptions based on symptoms, because as you know, people can be COVID positive and not know it, right? So we had to literally test everybody. And we do have a very strict protocol, and even now, for all of our scheduled living kidney transplant donations, that our donors and our recipients have to be tested for COVID in a very short time interval right before the transplant date to ensure that they're negative. In terms of the question about like, what is the effect of COVID on our CKD patients? You know, certainly we know that patients that have chronic kidney disease and stage renal disease, they're definitely at a higher risk, or hypertension patients at a higher risk for more severe cases of COVID. So we took very, you know, strict precautions with our patients. We have some patients that do rely on public transportation to get to their dialysis. So not ideal, right? In a pandemic to be riding on the bus. You know, where you're, you know, it's really impossible to socially distance. So we had to be very creative and write letters to employers, to schools, and develop ways that we can get transportation for our patients to make sure that they're safe. So it was you know, it really took a village to make this happen. And it is continuing to be on the forefront of our minds of how to protect our patients. But it has taken a, you know, a toll on all of us, but I will say that our patients have fared very well. And in terms of our kidney transplant patients and with COVID, it is interesting because the more serious cases of COVID, you know, it's really an inflammatory reaction that is causing them to be so terribly ill. And what we're treating COVID patients with that are having an inflammatory reaction is actually immune suppression. And we've seen that our transplant patients that have developed COVID have done very well, as long as that they come to medical attention quickly, so that we can get them the therapy that they need and we make adjustments to their immunosuppression. So as long as we have good communication with our patients, educating them on the signs and symptoms of the disease, they've done very well.
Wow, there's lots of things there that like you don't immediately consider, like the transportation piece. And just so many little inner workings there. It's good to think about. And I'm glad to hear that things are going better. I'm sure when this all began, it was like just a struggle to sort of just figure out how to handle everything. Sarah, do you have anything you want to add about that from the adult perspective? Is it kind of similar for your program?
I would pretty much echo exactly what she said. We also stopped living donations for a few months last spring as well, just because we weren't sure what was going on, and we wanted to do what was best for our donors and our recipients as well. And then our deceased donor transplants also, those were a lot more reduced as well, just because we were being a lot more cautious about which donors we were taking and making sure that they had all the proper testing beforehand. We also test our donors and our recipients days before they come in for that surgery, just to make sure that they don't have COVID. As far as our donors, if we were to have a donor that had been diagnosed with COVID, they still are able to donate, but we have to wait at least 60 days and they have to be completely asymptomatic before we would ever consider transplanting or taking their kidney. So
interesting. So it's not like it doesn't totally prevent somebody from being a living donor. They just have to wait.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
We spoke a lot in depth with Dr. Jameson, as I'm sure you've seen his face around lately. So he just recommended we hold off for our donors until they're completely recovered.
Good to know. Good to know. I think we have another question from the chat. Eric, do you want to address that one?
Absolutely. I don't see it in front of me though.
Let me see here. That would be helpful,
there it is.
If you could see it.
Fantastic. It says my father got a transplant about 12 years ago. About 2 to 3 years ago, it stopped working and he had to go on dialysis. The hospital here in Grand Rapids indicated he was too frail for a transplant. And that's a great question. What does that mean? They indicated that he needed back surgery before getting that. Can anybody provide any insight, perhaps? I mean, I'm sure it's all case by case, but what typically is involved with getting a person who's not viable? I
can comment on that. I think in terms of like preparing our patients for transplant, in this situation, it's a retransplant, right? So we want them to have any elective surgeries done prior to the transplant because, I'm not sure of the specifics of this patient in particular and what degree of immunosuppression he was on. Usually with a failed transplant, we reduce the immunosuppression so they're not on as much. But if there are elective procedures to be done, the reason that we want those done before transplant is that when you consider after transplant, you're on heavy immunosuppression, and that can increase risk of infection, but also delay wound healing potentially. So, it is in all patients' best interest, if there's anything that when we're doing our very, very comprehensive evaluation for transplant readiness, we want to make sure they are optimized for a good outcome. And that might be any elective surgeries, get those done. Nutrition needs to be optimized. You won't do as well if you're not in a good nutritional state, which is a big struggle for a lot of our patients on dialysis because they are restricted with their diet, their protein intake, and all these things can influence how well you're going to recover post-transplant.
So is the suggestion then just to follow up? Follow the doctor's rules and try to meet the goals pre-surgery in order to be able to have that surgery. And I guess it just depends on how the patient responds.
Yeah, and Eric, it's really a focus on optimization for the transplant, and making sure that any steps along the way are taken care of. You don't want to postpone a back surgery for after transplant because you're going to be laid up with your transplant, and that's not really helpful for your back recovery, right? How are you going to do physical therapy when you're recovering from a transplant? So it's intuitive really to think in that situation. And again, I don't know the specifics medically, but I wouldn't have made the same recommendation if I knew a patient was in need of another surgery. I would want it done before transplant.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Yes. Thank you for explaining that. Well, I mean, we're here to talk about living donation and transplant. And I mean, when it comes to chronic kidney disease, I mean, it's obvious that it affects a lot of people. I mean, we know that approximately 82% of people on the transplant waiting list right now in Michigan are in need of a kidney, which is a staggering number. And we also know that sometimes wait times for a kidney from a deceased donor can be anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So, I mean, when you consider that, living kidney donation, man, that really seems like an excellent option to help somebody in need of a kidney transplant. So I want to talk a little bit more about how the process works. And Sarah, I was hoping you could kind of tell us a little bit about how the process works for adults with your program, specifically, like what types of living kidney donation do you offer? I know there are multiple kinds, and maybe you'll be so kind as to explain how they work to us too, because sometimes when we start talking about kidney chains and paired exchange, it can get a little over our heads. Yeah. So please enlighten us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess with the living donation process, once they our donors fill out a personal health history form, and they turn it back into us, we have our living donor advocate reach out to them to go over their rights and discuss that with them. And then nursing will review their health history to make sure that they don't have any potential issues or we don't have any concerns about that. After that, we do check their blood typing and their antibodies to see if they are compatible with their recipient. Once we do that, and if that still looks great, then we'll move them on to look at their own overall health. So we do a lot of labs on our donors just to make sure that it would be a safe option for them to donate. They'd spend a whole day in our center where they'd meet with our physicians and our whole team here, ask questions, and be further evaluated as well. They'd also do some radiology to look at the anatomy of their kidneys, and they would do some cardiac testing too, just to make sure that they would be a good candidate to be able to donate, and they'd be able to function well with just one kidney after donation. Once we have all those results, we bring them to an interdisciplinary team. We discuss them, and then if they're approved, then we can get them scheduled for surgery. Typically, our donors are in the hospital for about 2 to 3 days after donation. It is a laparoscopic procedure typically, and then there is a lifting restriction for them after they donate, so that will depend on when they can go back to work. If it's a really physical job, it will be probably about 6 to 8 weeks before they could go back to work. And yeah, like you said, there's multiple different types of donation as well. So our most common type of donation is direct donation. That's when somebody knows their recipient and they want to donate directly to that person. But we can also do remote and paired donation. So remote donation is when somebody is a match with their recipient, but they live out of state. They can actually have surgery in their home state if they go through a remote donation center, and then their kidney is actually sent here to the recipient at our center. And then the final one is pair donation. That one is a little bit more complicated. It's basically a donor swap is how I like to explain it. It's usually when a recipient and a donor, they don't match, or if they want a better match due to size or gender, anything like that. So the donor and the recipient are entered into our paired program. We use the National Kidney Registry for that. It's the largest pair donation program in the United States. So once we enter them in, we run a list of all the potential donors across the U.S. that match that recipient. From there, our doctors will review it and pick the ones that we think would be the best match for that recipient. And then the same thing would happen for that donor's kidney. The other centers would be looking at them and evaluating them as well. But it's just a really great option because it allows a donor to still be able to donate to somebody, and their intended recipient still is able to receive a living donor transplant in return. We actually have a surgery coming up this week, and it's a chain of 14 people. So it's pretty incredible.
That was on Grey's Anatomy once. That same thing happened on Grey's Anatomy. They had like a chain or a domino thing. I forgot the terminology they used, but I was like, oh my gosh, there it is. But yeah, that's quite a dynamic thing to think of. There's so many people at once in this whole, all these different moving parts. It's fantastic.
I have tried to wrap my mind around how that works. I'll just leave that up to the professionals. I'm glad it's a thing. And, I think it's fantastic that they figured out a way to do this for people, right? So, and Eric, do I need to remind you that Grey's Anatomy is not real life?
I know, but still that happened though. It happened because I tried to explain what's funny? I tried to explain that whole thing that was just being explained to my daughter, and she didn't get it. And then it had happened like within a day on the show. I go, that's what's happening. And then she was like, okay. So it was kind of real.
It was the most relevant example you had at the time, I'm sure.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Dr. Steinke, tell us a little bit, like from the pediatric perspective, is it a relatively similar process, or are there different requirements for somebody who wants to donate a kidney to a child?
It's actually very similar. I think probably the only difference is that our age, like the upper limit might be a little bit different, just considering that, none of our organs are meant to last forever. And we want kids to have the longest, or we expect them to live a long time, right? Excuse me. So we want kidneys that are going to last a long time for them. Yeah. So we want to get 30 years out of that kidney, because most children, depending on the age that they're transplanted, most likely will need more than one transplant.
Yeah.
So we want absolutely the, most longest longevity that we can get out of that kidney transplant. In terms of the evaluation, it's very similar from transplant program to transplant program. The evaluation process for a living donor not only focuses on how good of a match you are for your recipient, but to ensure that you're healthy and that we are not taking away your kidney when perhaps there is an underlying health condition that would not be in your best interest. So, for example, if you have diabetes or uncontrolled hypertension, those would be things that we wouldn't want to take your kidney, because those are the two most common causes that adults develop end-stage renal disease in the United States. So there are some pre-existing medical conditions that may preclude you, but those are things that they go through when they evaluate. And sometimes new conditions are identified during the process. But again, it's just important for folks to know that the reason that there's such comprehensive testing for living donors is to ensure that we are doing the right thing for them. That really, as Sarah pointed out, you're contacted by a living donor advocate, and we advocate strongly for our living donors. Again, this is a selfless thing that they're doing, and sometimes we have to protect them, because more than one occasion, I've had a situation where a living donor really was motivated to donate, but there was a medical condition that was identified during their evaluation that caused everyone to pause and say, this is likely not a good idea for you to donate because of future medical conditions that could develop. And the motivation that you'll see in folks are, they don't care. They want to still do it because of their loved one is needing a transplant. And that's why you need all this team of advocates for the living donor to help them. Kidney transplants, as I mentioned, they have the potential to last 20 to 30 years. And a lot of that depends on the health of the donor, the age of the donor, and also how well that recipient takes care of themselves after the transplant. Yeah.
That's a really long time,
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
It's a long time, and that's why, most adults need one transplant, right?
Yeah.
But kids need more than one.
Yeah.
So and again, going back to, deceased donation, that's why children are given priority in the United States for the best kidneys to be given to them, because we want them to have the longest time with that kidney because they'll likely need another one.
Yep. Makes sense. We get a lot of questions when it comes to living kidney donation from people who, obviously they're curious about the process, may be interested in doing it, but sometimes people are wondering, who covers the cost for somebody to be a living kidney donor? Is there financial assistance available? And, whoever would like to jump in and answer that, feel free.
Yeah, I can take that. That's a great question. So at our center here, our donors don't have to pay for the cost of their evaluation. So the blood work and the radiology, that's actually covered by our center. As far as the surgery goes, that's actually billed through the recipient's insurance. So the donors also don't pay for their surgery either. I know oftentimes lost wages from being off work that long can also be something that's difficult for a lot of people. So with that, unfortunately, we don't cover that. I do know there's employers who will provide FMLA or short-term disability for that. There's also some donor programs too, such as NALDAC or Donor Shield through the National Kidney Registry as well, that can help with those lost wages as well. So there are some programs out there to assist with that.
Okay, so the National Kidney Registry site has some information on that?
Yeah, you could check that out on their Donor Shield.
Sure, or I'm sure both of your transplant programs probably have information available as well. But that's great. That's a kind of a common thing, like I said, that comes up from time to time. Elizabeth, Eric, do you have anything you want to add to, what your experience was like?
Elizabeth, please.
Oh, okay. Like I said, the experience was pretty smooth for the most part, especially during COVID. I mean, you had to do what you had to do in regards to that. But As far as for like the cost, if anything was billed to me, my kidney coordinators were just like, hey, just send me an email with it, and they took care of it. When it comes to cost as the donor, like you said, there are no costs, but it was good to know that you had somebody in your corner. If something did come up, you can call them, email them, and they took care of it right away. So that was I never really had an issue with that. And then I also did go through the NELDAC for travel expenses and things of that nature. So that was really helpful for me and my family, because my sister was basically me and my mom's caregiver while we were all, recovering and whatnot. So that was just very helpful to us, for grocery wise, gas, things of that nature. So we were very blessed for that.
Absolutely. And I'll see if our friends behind the scenes can maybe bring up the link for that, the National Living Donor Assistance Center too, and put that up on the screen if possible. But Eric?
She said it. Everything she said, I experienced as well. And so, yeah, I had the exact same experience. So everything, I echo everything.
It really sounds to me like when you make the decision to be a living donor, regardless of what transplant center you work with or the program, they really are in your corner, and you have somebody there to walk you through the process every step of the way and really advocate for you. That's sort of the takeaway I've had this morning. It's obviously not something you're left to navigate on your own, which is great.
Agreed.
Yes.
That's the way I felt. That's how I felt. So
for sure. Acacia, tell us from the perspective, when did you first learn that you needed a kidney transplant, and what made you sort of pursue the going with a living donor? Was that like a deliberate choice you made, or how did that all work?
So I first learned that I would need a kidney transplant. I was very young, probably like 11. I came back from a camping trip with my father, actually, and all of a sudden I just started swelling up terribly. I would just wake up, my eyes would be swollen shut. So it was pretty bad. And a lot of doctors that I went to actually before going to Helen DeVos thought I had Giardia just because of unfiltered water that we could have drank on the camping trip. But then later on, we found out that I did have FSGS and that both of my kidneys were attacked by this. And then just for the living donor,
I think we lost you. I think we lost her. We'll work on getting her back.
But, if I can just pick it up, obviously I don't know what exactly she was saying, but I think that her describing 11-year-old little girl, I can't even begin to think what that would be like for a child to be hooked up to a dialysis setup for extended time. It is, it's horrible to hear about anybody, but a child, and that really to me takes center stage on all of this. And I just can't imagine it. And so it's almost like it's you want to do so much so quickly, but it seems like we keep hearing more and more about larger and larger numbers of young people being affected by something like this. And I think that is to me the biggest concern. Well, for any illness, that is, you never want to see a child suffer, but I can't imagine a little kid who is supposed to be out running around skinning his knees up, having to be hooked up to a machine for 12 hours every day.
It's awful, right, to think about that. And thank God we have living donation, right, as an option for people. To that end, Val, do you want to tell us a little bit about the National Kidney Foundation's Big Ask, Big Give program, and maybe like what advice you would have for somebody who finds themselves in need of a kidney transplant, or maybe has a child in need of a kidney transplant? Like, what are some ways you can ask somebody to donate a kidney to you, right? It's like you're not you're not just asking to borrow something, you are literally asking somebody to give you a body part, right? And so like, how can you have conversations like that? And what services do you guys offer around helping people have those conversations?
Well, you talked about the big ask, the big give, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It's about getting in there again and taking charge and saying, hey, I don't want to sit on dialysis for years and wait on a cadaver donor. I have people in my life. And maybe they would consider. And one thing that families will do is say, oh, I don't want to ask my sister because she has children. I don't want to ask my mom because she's 50 and is too old. And all of those things, when you get educated and feel more confident about where you are, then you're able to say, I got this and I'm going to ask. So that big give is really a training where we are offering education to persons on how to empower themselves to ask someone to donate them a kidney. So it will go through a lot of the things that would need to take place. So Dr. Steinke's talking about DeVos. There's Sarah, who's talking about St. Mary's or Mercy Health St. Mary's Transplant Center. Contacting those social workers is really important because they can work with you on what the steps look like. Doing this workshop for the Big Ask Big Give can actually educate you and empower you with tools to do it. So, hey, you could be writing letters. You could be doing Facebook posts. You could be asking people at the church. Sometimes our world seems small, especially when you get sick, right? People aren't calling as much. You're not partying as much. You're not having a good time as much. So you can feel alone and isolated. This is really about looking at your entire world and saying, I got a team of people that love me in my world, that want me to live. I think Eric is a prime example of that. He's, trotting along, doing a little social media and thinking, hey, I wonder where that cat is. And this is how I think the universe works, right? He's not thinking about, I'm going to give a kidney. He's thinking, I'm going to reach out to some friends and see, where we're at in life. And then you meet this guy and you're like, oh my gosh, your heart draws you, right? Your spirit draws you to say, I want to help this person. And I think there's a lot of people in our lives who would consider, if they know, if we can get some of those fears and myths out of the way and really empower them to say, you know what, you got a lot of life in you. And I would love to offer you another 30 years, right, of abundance. So I think that's fantastic. That program will build you and build you and build your likelihood of getting a kidney and not sitting forever waiting. So you're going to work with your transplant team on your testing and all of the things that you need to do. The other end is, what do I do as the patient, right? In order to prepare myself. And then how do I look for donors and then get them prepared? Because it is a process for the donor as well, as Sarah and Dr. Steinke said. So the program in a nutshell is all about empowerment and gearing you up for a new life.
Yeah, it is awesome. I highly recommend checking it out. I know we're kind of coming to the end of our time today, but I want to be sure to ask both Elizabeth and you, Eric, what advice you would give somebody who's kind of like finds himself in your situation. Maybe you've got a family member that needs a kidney transplant, or maybe you discover an old friend on social media that needs a kidney transplant. Like, what advice would you give somebody who's like potentially considering going through this process?
Okay, I can only speak from my standpoint. My advice to you is, don't think, just do it, okay? Just do it. And the reason why I say this is because that's exactly how I did it. You have to understand you have about a 99% positive track record because of the best minds in medicine working with you as part of this. And there will come times when you'll have a little bit of self-doubt creep in and anxiety. And I had that happen too. And don't listen to it. Pack it away. Mm-hmm. I didn't go on the internet and look up other people's stories. I did none of that. I didn't lift one finger to research this. Not
smart.
One. Wow. And the reason why I say that is you can talk yourself out of it. Okay. And trust your doctors, trust the physicians and the professionals who know exactly what they're doing and do what they tell you to do. And you more than likely will be 100% fine and you will save their life. So my advice is don't think, just do it.
Excellent advice, at least when it comes to this, right?
That's what I say, at least. Now that may not be in everybody's wheelhouse, but I'm always kind of like a just go get it done anyway type of person. But everybody's different, and that's one more thing I need to point out. For me, no one gets judged because they don't want to give a kidney away. This is tricky business, okay? Not everybody. This isn't for everybody, and that is okay. But if you feel that drawing to you, that pulling at you, hey, maybe just have a little faith and try to inch your way through this and see where it takes you.
Great advice. How about you, Elizabeth?
Mine was similar to Eric. It was pretty much a no-brainer. It was my mom. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was simple as that. It was my mom. My sister and I decided, hey, we're going to go ahead and get tested, see how this is going to work. I ended up being the one who was a more compatible match. And we went through all of the testing. As it was mentioned earlier, I had multiple different times where I had to go in for testing. Then I had to meet with a whole team of people. But just my biggest thing is just get educated on it. And if it's something that you want to do, just like Eric said, just do it. It's a lot easier said than done because, again, just like Eric said, you have those times where it's like, ooh, am I doing the right thing? Like, you're doing the right thing, but you get that little anxiety piece. And I got that the day of surgery. But other than that, I was just like, you know what? This is my mom. I want her to have a better quality of life. I'm going to go ahead and do this.
Yeah, truly, you guys, it's an amazing thing when you really think about it, though, that you make a decision like that and decide to help somebody. And it's so awesome. I think we have Acacia back. Acacia, what about, what would you say to someone that finds himself in the position you were in? I know you were very young when you were first, diagnosed and learning that you needed a kidney transplant, but do you have any advice you think that you could share for someone who has learned they're in need of a kidney and how they could approach somebody about being a living donor?
I think I would say definitely stay patient and stay positive. I think those are the two most important things that I definitely had to learn a lot. I think we talked earlier about it. I definitely thought since I was so young, like a lot of the things that like I couldn't do anymore. And I was just thinking of myself more as like a sick kid rather than just a regular kid. So I think definitely stay positive and know that even though you do need a kidney transplant, that you can pretty much still do a lot of things that you normally could. And then also keeping patient, I think, is a really big thing. Definitely if you're on dialysis, because it's a very hard thing to be on, especially it hit me pretty hard, definitely being so young. But I think just knowing that eventually you will find a perfect match, and knowing that there are people out there who are willing to give you a kidney, whether they be living or deceased, and that it's just a wonderful thing to have. And for someone to give you, it's absolutely amazing.
It really is. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else have any final thoughts you want to add before we end here today?
I would just like to shout out really quickly.
Val.
I'm sorry, Dr. Stanky,
No,
that we do have two big give workshops coming up. So I want to give a shout out to those. They are both virtual. One will be on the 25th of March and the other one is on May 26th. They're 2 hours each, and it really is going to be geared toward the CKD patient, their family, friends, and loved ones, and then the potential donor. So doing all of those wonderful things, learning about kidney disease basics, renal replacement options, what does the evaluation process look like through your hospital, what does the waiting list look like, and then how do we keep ourselves, as Dr. Steinke said, at optimal point so that when it's time, we're ready. So look on the NKFM website if you're interested in more information on the Big Give, or if you're looking to join one of the virtual workshops.
Sounds great. We will do that. Thank you. How about you, Dr. Steinke?
I just wanted to put a plug in because I know we've talked a lot about living donation, but and it sounded like, Eric and Heather, you guys both knew who your donor was, but there's also a place that, sometimes people just want to give the gift of life, but they don't know who to give it to. And, everybody has different motivation for doing these things. So we definitely, have altruistic donors who decide to give this gift of life to someone they don't even know.
Yes.
So we encourage, if you're interested, but you don't actually have somebody near and dear to you in your life that needs a kidney, just know that there are people out there that need them and don't have anyone that they know that's willing to donate. So you could actually be that gift to them. And I was hoping, Allison, if we could share the sites for both DeVos and Mercy Health for our living donor program. So if they're interested,
Yes,
they could go to those links and check it out.
yes, that is an excellent point. Thank you. So many things I wanted to get to today. It's I could go on and on. This is such a great discussion. And thank you for reminding us that you don't need to know who your recipient is when you are donating a kidney. If you feel like you want to help somebody in this way, please reach out to one of these transplant centers if you're here in West Michigan, or go on Google, find out where the kidney transplant center is near you if you're not in the West Michigan area. And I'm sure they, as we learned today, they have fantastic staff who would be willing to help you navigate this process and help somebody you don't even know. So yes, we'll be sure to share those links. Definitely check out the websites for each of the transplant centers here in West Michigan if you want to learn more about this, or you just want to just curious about living donation and how it works. And maybe, I know we're really going over, but one last thing I want to say somebody just wants to learn about this and they start to sign up and they say, oh, this isn't for me. They change their mind. That's okay too, right? If somebody determines like this isn't going to probably be the best for them.
I see everybody nodding their head that absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. They even ask you on the day of the surgery, before they put you under general, they make you sign a thing. And that has happened where people have said, no, I'm not. But it's up to the absolute last minute. If you choose not to, that is up to the donor.
Yeah. Just want people to be clear that it hurts nothing to express an interest in this and at least find out, right? Exactly. Again, thank you all. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to be here today to share your expertise and your experience with us. We had awesome questions and comments. I apologize that we couldn't directly answer all of them. Hopefully you guys, everybody watching, has learned something new today, and maybe, who knows, maybe we're going to have some new living donors on the way here. People are so inspired by this conversation. Eric, great. Thank you for being an awesome co-host. It was really great to hear things from your perspective.
My pleasure.
As well.
My pleasure. And if anybody ever wants to reach out to me directly with a question about this, just please don't hesitate. You can very quickly get a hold of me, eric@ericzaneshow.com. And I can tell you directly from my experiences what maybe to expect if you just want more information.
That is awesome. Thank you. And don't forget to like this video, share it, leave us a note in the comments section, and continue to share your thoughts on this topic. And I just want to say, lastly, we'll be wrapping up National Kidney Month in a few weeks, and that we're moving right into National Donate Life Month in April. So be sure to stay tuned to Gift of Life's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube for more ways that you can get involved and help share the message of donation. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.